Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining on our webinar today, where we're going to talk about what's new in Yurbi version 11. Happy to have you here. I know a lot registered to get the recording, so we are recording this, and right after the webinar, after the video finishes rendering, you'll get the recording via your email if you attended, and if you did not attend as well. I see some attendees coming in. Thanks for joining. I'm going to go over a couple of quick slides before we get into the meat of the webinar, just to give time for those who might come in a little bit later. My name is David Ferguson, and many of you have worked with me in the past, so you're familiar with who I am. I'm the founder and the president of 5,000 Fish, the company behind Yurbi. And we've been working on this version 11 for a long time, longer than it should have been. But honestly, we wanted to put out the best product that we could put out. And for those who have been with us for a while, and you know, we do have customers that have been with us since the old Oak Tree Navigator days, way before 2008, over 10 years ago. You know, we've learned a lot in how to do updates and upgrades, and we tend to do these big ones every 2 to 3 years. So this is, we've been on version 10 now since 2000 and roughly 16. So we're on about a 2-year cycle where now we're coming out with version 11. Before I jump into it, a couple important things. I'm going to put the news and updates up front. So while I have your attention versus those who might have to leave in the middle of the webinar, but I promise you we'll get through all the new stuff that's in version 11. Couple things that you may have missed. We've been sending out a couple of emails. We do now have a new change log. So one of the key things that we're going to focus on in 2019, and actually, before I even get into that, I do have the public chat active. I also have the Q&A active. So if you can hear me and see the slides fine, if you could just type yes in the public chat, that'll be great. And I know that that you guys are able to hear and see me. All right, great. I see a yes. So that's perfect. As you do have questions, all right, lots of yeses coming in. Awesome. As you do have questions, you can go into that Q&A tab and put those in. I'm going to save time for the end to answer as many of those as well. So 2019, big focus of ours is going to be on communication. So we have a new change log, something that we have not done a well enough job communicating as we update Yurbi. And believe me, we actually come up with updates almost on a weekly basis. A lot of those are support fixes and interactions that we have with our customers. We fix things on a very rapid basis, but we are coming up with really great features that we need to do a better job telling you about. So that's a URL that you'll want to bookmark, changelog.yurbi.com. If you're not familiar, we also take a lot of what we do in development from the feedback of our customers. So if you go to feedback.yurbi.com, you can actually submit ideas and requests and things that you would like to see in the product. And you can also vote on the other ideas out there that you like as well. And as you vote, you can subscribe to that. And we are going to do a better job of updating that so that as we start to put something in progress or complete something, you'll get notifications that way as well. And then lastly, on the news and update side, we do offer services now. So this is something new we just launched. We haven't officially done a big announcement about it yet. But if you go to our website, yurbi.com, right there in the header, you'll see services and you can see all the different things that we do. These are things that we've done for customers in the past on an ad hoc basis. We're formalizing it now. Many on the webinar, I recognize some names. We're actually in some report building engagements with your organization as we speak. So this gives you the ability to speed up your implementation, or if you just want to take your business intelligence and your reporting to the next level, you can team with us as a group of experts who are very familiar with the software that you're using. And you know, we've been able to do some really great things, and we're excited about our service offerings on that side. So definitely check out that as well. Now, the last thing before we get into the actual demo is, with all this news and all these new things that we have coming out in 2019, you know, it's never been our policy to put a lot of email out. You know, it's not necessarily spam because we have a relationship with you either via our website and trials or as a customer, but we're not going to send out a whole bunch of emails. That's just not in our nature. And honestly, most emails these days will go into your spam folder, and I don't know if you're even getting my emails in many cases. What we are going to do is have a lot bigger presence on social media, and you'll see that I've got our 5,000 Fish has a page on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and we're starting a new medium on YouTube. So we're going to do a lot on YouTube. Wherever you might be, wherever you hang out in the social media world, I would encourage you to follow us, because that's where we are going to put out more. And we got some exciting things that we're going to do. We're going to start a weekly Yurbi tips. They're going to be focused around version 11 so that we can surface some of the things that you might not be aware of. So that's going to be on all of our platforms. We're doing a whole revamp of all of our knowledge articles and support site, our academy. With version 11, we're going to make it bigger and better. So we're going to be putting those videos and putting those things out on our social media channels as well. So that's one way you can learn about what's new there. Feature announcements, we mentioned the change log, that's going out on social media. And we're going to do more webinars like this. So if you've been with us for about a year and a half, you may remember that we used to do those deep dive webinars where we would take about 45 minutes and really dive into a specific area of Yurbi and do some training. We're going to do those, but we're going to also do more just general business intelligence, best practices related to dashboards and reporting. We're going to do more educational type webinars like that, where you can get benefit even if you're not one of our customers. We're going to put those on our social media channels as well. So definitely follow those so you don't miss out on any of the content we're putting out, because I'm not going to email everybody and fill your box up. And as I say, most email these days goes straight into spam, no matter what kind of technical deliverability factors you've put into place. All right, so now let's get into version 11. We had a specific goal in mind as we start any major update. As I mentioned, we always do updates. We're putting out new builds weekly and monthly. But with version 11, to go from a version 10 to a version 11, we like to do what's called splash features. We like to bring in and really take all the feedback that we've had over the years from people who are customers, people who decided not to become customers. We take all the feedback and look to make our product better. And that's what we've been able to do with version 11. Our goal is, one, to make the interface more intuitive. Our whole goal with Yurbi is your business intelligence. It's business intelligence for the business user, and that means making it easy. So we want to make that interface as intuitive as possible and bring those power user features that we like to provide in Yurbi and make them even easier for non-power users. We want to really improve that report building experience and make it faster, not just in terms of speed of the program, but in speed of the process by which you create reports. So you're going to see a lot of that in version 11. I think we've really succeeded and hit the nail on that one. And the report building process is a lot more intuitive and fast. We're really excited about the new builder. We want to continue to improve that user experience with the personalization. So again, it's your business intelligence. It's always designed so that the builder can build their template or their view of a dashboard or report, but build in areas where each individual user can personalize it. We try to continue down that path to put more power in the hands of the view-only user. And that's why we don't call them view-only, we call them agents, because they do have a lot more that they can do than just view. And then, of course, two big things we always focus on is we want to keep the interface current. One of my big pet peeves with software in general is that the software could be amazing, but it looks like it's from the 1980s. We want to make sure that we are on the modern standard when it comes to interface design. And honestly, I think that it helps with the intuitiveness of the product so that users feel comfortable clicking around and are not confused about it, because interface design improves year by year based on best practices in the in the industry. And then the last thing, and this comes from our experience doing this for the last 19 years now, is make the migration easy. And I think we really nailed that one as well. So I'll cover that after we see the presentation. I'll cover the migration steps for you as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at version 11. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's share this. All right. If you guys can see my screen, if you could type yes in the chat window again, you should be seeing a dashboard. Okay. We got a yes. Perfect. This is the first time I've used this webinar platform. So definitely want to make sure everything is working properly. Also, don't forget, if you have any questions as we go through this, put those in either the chat or in the Q&A tab, and we'll get to those in a second. So let me bring up my notes as I go through this so I don't forget anything I want to talk about. All right, so one of the key things that we want to do, one of the use cases for Yurbi these days, it's probably about half of our business, is the embedded analytics. It's partners who are leveraging Yurbi as a part of their software. So the white label concept of branding and leveraging Yurbi has really increased over the last 18 months, let's say. So one of the things we want to do is continue to make it easy to brand. And to us, that means putting Yurbi in the background and putting a focus on the data. So one of the things you'll notice right away for this dashboard, if you're familiar with the existing product, is the Chrome has been slimmed down quite a lot. You'll see up here in the header bar, it's a very thin header. It's a monochrome header from a color perspective, so that's easier to brand. It's just one color that you have to brand at that point. Of course, you'll see the logo is now in the center. You can remove that or put your own logo as always, but the brand is front and center if you did want to go that route. And if I were to scroll down to the bottom of this, there's no footer. So again, one less element that you have to brand. But the concept here is to make this dashboard and these KPIs and this data be bold and right there when you log in, and kind of put Yurbi in the back. We've always wanted you to put your brand there. Now we're making that even a little easier. The other thing we've done, and this is just throughout the product, not specific to the dashboard, is we reduce text. Because, of course, when you white label, you have to change text in many cases. So you'll see that we've removed and stripped out a lot of text from areas, except for one specific place, and that's going to be on our icons and on our action buttons. If you think back to version 10, a lot of our action buttons were just simple icons. And while we thought the icons represented something intuitive, you had to hover over them or click to see what they actually would do. Part of our new interface, you'll see that you'll have an icon, but you'll have add a widget. It's very clear that if I click this, I'm adding a widget to the desktop. I can favorite that. You'll see the new filter. We'll talk about that in a second, to save views. If I start to get into the actual widget of the dashboard, we've reduced kind of the hover of that widget, because that hover had about 5 or 6 icons. If you were a editor or a dashboard builder, we've added a more menu. And again, more, it's a text word with actions. So now a lot of those icons that you'll see represented throughout the product, you're going to see an actual piece of text that's going to tell you that. And all of this is integrated in with our phrase manager so that you can change this text easily. Of course, you can translate this if a user is in the Spanish translation of Yurbi, then they would see these in Spanish. And of course, you can add any other language that you want. We support French, Spanish, and Dutch out of the box, and we have a couple more of those coming. So that's one key thing. One of the powerful things now that we have this model on the dashboard with this action menu is we can put more actions. So we're going to start to add a lot more things. One of the first things you're going to see in this action menu is the ability to go in and change the visualization without having to do the zoom action and go into the visualization wizard, the output type wizard. So we're going to put that front and center in the action menu, and we're going to make it a lot faster to get into those personalizations from a visualization standpoint. Now, there's a lot of other little tiny things we did on the dashboard. I won't go into all of those. I'm going to keep this sort of at a medium level. But the big splash feature on the dashboard is the global filter. So if you recall, I believe if I were to zoom in on some of these, they would have that prompt panel where a user is able, at an individual report level, go in and select whatever parameter they want and rerun that at the individual report level. This global filter allows you to do that across all the widgets on the dashboard. So let me go ahead and click this. Now, this is not 100% finished. We'll talk about the timeline for things. This is going to be out in January. But you'll notice that as you create that global filter, you'll be able to pick if it's a date time filter, if it's a numeric filter, if it's a text-based filter. And these are all the widgets that exist on that dashboard that allow you at that point to pick the fields that are tied into that widget. So any widget that has a date field that represents, let's say, an open date, you can connect together with criteria and add that filter. And then the powerful thing is it's not just a one-time adding of that filter. From a personalization perspective, that individual user can save that as a view and have that drop-down list of saved filter views that they can come back to at any time really quickly from their dashboard. So this is great when you want to look at region A, region B, region C, or customer A, B, D, or if you have today, this week, this month, you can quickly flip between those, update all the elements on the dashboard without having to go in and hit the individual prompt panel. So that's the big splash feature that we put on the dashboard. And then there's a lot of other little small things in terms of the movement and the placement of widgets. We've improved the grid behind the dashboard as well. Oh, one other big thing is the menu structure. You'll see here, and we've got a standard menu structure across the Yurbi platform now. Before we had things a little bit scattered. And you'll see in all areas, we've expanded the concept of your personal favorites, again, personal preference, a public library and a private library. And you can still create those dashboards, drag and drop your dashboards, favorite them, and do all things from here. The search is now more of a dashboard discovery search. I could come in here, let's put in test. I know I have some dashboards named test in the public library. And you'll see that'll show me my favorites named test. It'll show me my public dashboards named test and the private library dashboards named test. So you've got the ability now to go out and discover dashboards you have permission to and quickly run those without needing to be in your favorites. And that's something that's really powerful and new. Before, you had to go to the library and run any dashboard easily. And now we've got that right here. Also, we've slimmed all these widgets down, put a dark mode on them, which was a highly recommended feature. Instead of taking the whole screen space, again, helps with embedding, helps with a lot of different things that we do on a regular basis. Let's pop over to the library and take a look there. Now, we did just some light touching and improvement on the library. Not a big overhaul like we did in the builder and the dashboard, but we did refresh it based on feedback that we've gotten over the last couple years. One big improvement here from a process perspective is just like in that dashboard, we're now separating that favorite, public, and private library from a tab perspective. What would happen is that the My Library, all these would be a long list of files, and many people didn't even realize that they had a private library because it was all the way at the bottom of their list of files, or they didn't really understand the concept of that private library. Now that they've got the ability to quickly navigate through and get to exactly the information they want, and all these are state resident, so that if I went off of this page and came back, it'll bring me back where I left off on the last time. But this is a great way to just hop right into your favorites from that perspective. You'll notice also we've really removed a lot of clutter in the actual library metadata. We had a lot of columns there. I think we removed about 3 columns. And if I were to hover over one, you'll see there's an action cart and that it pops up where I can get those extra columns of information. So we're not losing that. The goal as we continue to enhance this sort of feature is, one, to make this something that you can customize yourself in terms of what you want to show there. You'll see some action buttons. You'll be able to place the action buttons that you want there right now. We've got the most common action buttons, which is share and run. But of course, anytime you want to run a report, you can just click on the report name or go into the action menu like you did before. So we didn't take away any features, but we added in just some new enhancement from that library perspective. And you'll see we also just made the whole folder permission system a little bit more intuitive, where now when I select a folder, it's got that folder name here. I've got all my options, and these, of course, will be grayed out depending on if you have permissions to read those or not. And you've still got the search capability. So nice touch up and improvement on the process side of the library. Now let's get into the builder. And the builder is where we did the majority of the splash feature in version 11. This is where we got most of our feedback. In version 10, we had that wizard-based builder where you start on step 1 and you work on your data set, and then you hit next and you go to step 2 and you do some things and you hit next and you go to the visualization tab and next to even do your saving if you wanted to. We thought that was smart. That was an improvement from version 9, but it honestly slowed down the reporting process a little bit more than the users of version 9, which was a slightly different building environment. We wanted to come back into that faster building approach with a single panel, single pane type of building approach. But we also wanted to take into account all the other feedback that we had from that builder. So what I'm going to do is this, I'm just going to walk through and show you. I'm going to build a report and kind of show you as we step through all of these enhancements that we've done in the builder. The starting point, very much the same. You select, I just got to notice my screen share was disconnected, so let me restart that. If you are not seeing, or I guess I'll type in yes if you are seeing my screen again, because I did get a message that it was disconnected. So if you can see, I've got the select app and report type up right now. If somebody in the public chat can pop in a yes on that, that'll be great. Okay, I think I saw a yes come in. Yep, all right, we're back. Perfect, sorry about that. So that's why it's important to have both of these screens up at the same time. So first step of it is you do pick your application just like you did before. Again, similar menu to the dashboard. So as I mentioned, we've kind of standardized across this, easy to brand, easy to customize. I'm gonna pick our sample app. Same concept, we're picking our report type, and we're gonna get our report tree. So that's not much difference. This is where the power comes in. Now, as I build a report, I'm gonna start to get real-time feedback from a live query of the data set as I build this report. I don't have to click and wait for the query to come in. It's gonna automatically refresh in a preview panel as I build this report, so I can see how these cards are interacting. If I wanna move this card up, I can move that card up and see how it affects this particular report. What we're doing is a top 50. So we're not slamming the database. We're just pulling back a subset of that data to show you a representation of what it's going to look like. You'll see the cards are a lot slimmer. They're now vertical versus horizontal. You can fit more on here, a little bit easier to work with. And the options menu, again, text in a menu, makes it easy to go in and do the functions that you would do on this card versus the icons that were there before. So for example, if I want to add criteria, I've got a criteria builder. Now this will eventually be updated with the same criteria builder we have in that dashboard filter. So we're going to consolidate that, but for now it's the same. And I can come in and say quickly, give me back everybody that's less than 50 years old as example. So that process of adding criteria hasn't changed, but now you'll see that I can quickly spy that I've got criteria on that card. And I can also come into the preview panel and start to filter and do the different things that I want to do over in the preview panel. Let's go ahead and make a quick report because I want to turn this into a visualization and show you the whole process. Let's add a count on this particular name. Let's put a sort order. So you'll see very simple to kind of go through, and that shows all of the things there. I'm going to go ahead and delete last name. And I'm going to hide visibility on the employee age. So now you'll see I've got a data set of how many employees by group. Let's go ahead and rename that, number of employees. And you'll see that all those are kind of saving behind the scenes. And now I've got my preview panel. Now let's say I want to make this report dynamic. Very common. We encourage you to put in the prompts. Let's go into group name and add criteria and make that a prompt. One of the things that really slowed you down from a building perspective is, one, you always had to hit that preview button to see it. Now you don't. But now as I have a prompt, you always had to answer that prompt. You'll see a little text here, suppress prompts. That will actually allow you to have the prompt in the report, but let you continue to build quickly without having to worry about that prompt. I'll add in another field. You'll see that prompt won't come back and question me at that time. If I do want to see the whole report, I can click full screen. Now that I've got my data set and I've got a clear indication of what the fields are doing, these are tabs. I've got the output tab. This very much represents step 2 in that old building process. You'll see a couple new things that are in version 10 as well. Select distinct is actually an option now. But I can quickly go into a basic pivot. And I say basic because we do have advanced pivot capability now. So this looks very much the same. And now you'll see that it'll bring me back that data set. Now, one important thing, as I do visualization and as I do pivot tables and things like that, I've behind the scenes automatically changed it to bring back all data, because that's critical to know what a pivot table or a chart will look like. So as I'm looking at a data grid, it's top 50, unless I say view full. But as I'm doing my charting and things, I'm going to get the full picture, which is very important for that process. And now let's pop into visualization. I can go through the chart wizard, and this is where our next big enhancement's coming. So we'll talk about that in a second. But we've already been making a lot of incremental improvements in here. If you did not see the change log entry on the label formats, really big enhancement. Also on the constant line, really big feature for adding in threshold and budget type of information. And you'll see that that same preview that we were looking at for the data table also applies to the visualizations as well. So now I could continue to come in here and say, well, you know, let's edit this criteria and remove that employee age restriction, and you'll see that that chart will automatically update based on those new numbers as well. Last step I want to show you in the builder is, as I go to save this, I haven't saved this report yet. I'm going to click save, and you'll see it'll bring up my save dialog where I can name it and give it a permission group and things like that. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll have that same public-private library concept that I can now save. So all of our mini libraries, this is what we call the mini library, has that same kind of tabbed approach. And now I've got that report saved. But a common thing that would happen as you're building reports is that you would edit a report and you would make a change and you really meant to duplicate, or you didn't mean to overwrite that report. So you'll see that if I go and hit that save button again, it's actually going to intelligently give me a menu and let me consciously make the decision, do I want to overwrite the existing report or save as? I also have now things like the report options easily exposed, so I can change names and descriptions and things like that if I did want to overwrite or save as. If I do a save as, I want to get the ability to do that anyhow. So there's just a lot of thought that's gone in, and there's really, I mean, it's thought on our part, but it's also the feedback from our users and our customers as they work with that. You'll also notice the last thing I'll point out is the field builder. Used to be up here in the header next to everything, next to all these actions, a little bit confusing what it was for. Now it's over here with your fields. Just makes sense, just logically makes sense. All right, let's move on to the last areas, which is the architect and the admin. Then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the roadmap, timeline, and also if you do have Q&A, let me pop over here. Okay, I see one Q&A. I'll get to that in a second. Definitely put those things in as well. Architect, we at this point in version 11, we've made a couple of minor improvements. I won't go into too much detail on those, but we've added a sort capability on your report types. In fact, let me just bring one in. You know, you don't see that this will have an icon and some text soon, but you'll see if I click on this, it's a little sort indicator that can allow you to auto sort your report types, which is really useful because you can't drag and drop these. And then we're also making some changes. The big thing that's coming on the roadmap in the architect is multi-select. So you'll be able to go in, and if I had a lot of fields that I just want to add into the a folder, I can multi-select those. Before we do that, we're going to make some adjustments to how we add in a field to dynamically pick the data type that's there by default. So if you're going to add everything, of course, it's going to be the default data type, and then you'll have to go in and edit to change that. But that's a common feedback thing that we get, and that is coming. That's not going to be in the initial release of V11, but that's one of the first things on the roadmap. Let's take a look in the admin. This will be the last thing before we jump back into the slides. Again, we've streamlined it. We've removed a lot of the text. That text just was not useful when you're white labeling and branding from that perspective. We had a couple of icons in this admin that followed their own little header and subheader structure. We've gotten everything in the same header and subheader navigation structure here. So now the breadcrumbs will work in all cases. I mean, by looking at customers and users working in Navigator, wow, I hadn't said Navigator in a long time. Working in Yurbi, we noticed a common trend of going back to the admin menu to get back to the admin, now you just click on admin. You'll get back there really easily. And then one of the bigger things that we've added into our permissions, into our apps, into our groups, if I were to click on these, it'll be the same thing, is lazy search. And what that means, and we're going to start to put more of this in the library and other places as well, but for those users with very long lists of users, and we have a couple that have an extremely long directory, for white label OEM perspective, they're using the API for that, but for our internal customers, it can really be painful in some cases. You'll see as I type, it'll actually do a lazy search. It's doing more than just the last name, or it's making a intelligent guess based on all of the areas of that to bring up. So if I were to put in David, for example, you'll see George Carter here, but that's because I've got David as the email. So a really nice type of search capability to filter that down to exactly what you want from that aspect. So that's been a really nice improvement from a process and a personalization perspective. Now let me pop back. I want to stop the screen sharing. I guess while I'm switching screens here, again, be sure to put any questions in. And what do you think? I mean, pop in some feedback in the chat there and tell me what you think. Is that an improvement? Are you liking what you're seeing? Is it something that's an improvement from the existing version? And I was supposed to set up a poll, but I didn't. But definitely share your thoughts there. And you hit the private chat tab as well and send it privately to me as well. All right, so let's talk about migration. That is the really good news about the version 11. It's a seamless migration. In fact, behind the scenes, we've been updating version 10 simultaneously with many of the API calls and database things. Because we've been working on version 11 for a while, we've kind of kept our code branches somewhat in sync, because a lot of the features that we were initially going to have only in version 11, we've actually put back in version 10, like the advanced pivot table. There's a lot of things that haven't even announced related to scheduled report headers, security, and things like that. We'll get to those in the new year, and be sure you follow us on social media and look at our change log on our website to get those updates. But it's as simple as just running the update file. So if you are familiar with the process of updating version 10 to the most recent patch or the most recent level, it's the exact same process from your version 10. In fact, if you installed version 10 today and then just installed our beta patch, you'll be on exactly what I just demoed here today. It's just that simple. About 30 seconds. We always encourage you, whenever you apply an update to Yurbi, to make sure you have a backup of your Yurbi directory and your database tables. And then, of course, you want to, for version 11, it's very important that you clear your browser cache, because that's where the big differences are in the web files that we're going to place from that update. And if you have the old files cached, I haven't seen too much problem with that, but it's always just a good practice to clear your browser cache when you do that. Now, there's one caveat to that. And the one big caveat is if you have customizations and branding customizations and JavaScript customizations in our custom JS and custom CSS files. When you do that update, we're not going to overwrite them. So you don't have to worry about losing any of those changes that you made, but you're most likely going to have to go in there and update those, because they're probably not going to work the same way that they worked in version 10. Many of the class names, just if you look at our library and how we do the tab structure and columns and things like that, if you've got, I know some of our partners have custom JS where they're hiding columns in that library, that if we've changed the position of those columns or removed those columns and you've got some code in there, it's probably not going to work anymore. Don't think it's going to throw a error message, but it will in your web developer console. It's not going to break anything typically, but it's not going to be the way you had it in version 10. So what we would encourage you is, if you do have custom JS and custom style sheets, is regardless, install this on a development test system, test that out, work with our support team, and we can help you with the adjustments on that. And that's actually one of the areas that we're going to really improve our documentation on and videos, is how to do more stuff in the custom JavaScript and the custom style sheet files, because that's one of the more powerful areas of the product and how you can customize that for yourself. Now, timeline, what's next? We're going to release this probably the first week of the year. And by release, what I mean, we'll make the announcement. We will replace version 10 as the object that gets downloaded when new people trial and evaluate Yurbi. They'll start to download version 11. And then, of course, any customer who wants to update at that point, we'll support them and help them get updated. But as I mentioned, that's a very easy thing to do. What I would encourage is to get your test environment set up at that point and start to run this in tests. One of the easiest ways is just to copy your Yurbi version 10 database and just install version 11 and leverage that version 10 database. Very, very simple process to set up a test environment version 11. You can even, because I mentioned the back end and the APIs, we've synced the code between the two branches, you could set up a separate virtual web directory for version 11 and use the exact same database as version 10. So you could run version 10 and version 11 simultaneously. Just work with our support and we'll help you set that configuration up. But in that particular case, if somebody makes a change in version 11 and save a report or edit a report, that same report will be available for users of version 10. So you can really do a phased approach or a pilot type approach as well. Now, in that first availability, the one piece that will not be there is the global dashboard filter. You saw when I did the presentation, that's kind of in a partial stage right now. That's really close, but that's going to probably be delivered as an update to version 11 in the end of January timeframe. So we're going to take the time and get that right versus pushing that out too quickly. And then from a Q1 perspective, and that's what what's next shows is what we are calling kind of like Q1 roadmap, because we've got quite a lot of stuff for later in the year. But the big important things that we're focused on next is to revamp that visualization building process I talked about. When you do the output type, we're going to incorporate that in the dashboard action widget. But the big thing we're going to do is, instead of having you click and then step through that wizard, it's a trend here. We're getting rid of wizards. Instead of having you click and step through that wizard, we're going to have you click and instantly see a chart. And then if you need to go in and tailor and customize that chart, then you would go into a configuration to do that. As you go into that configuration to do that, it's not going to be a next type of concept. It's going to be very much like our builder, where you have the output tab and you have the visualization tab. Every area of customization you want to do to that chart will be represented by a tab in that dialog, where you can just freely click between them to make the changes and save it. So it's not going to be a very linear process like it is today. It's going to be, whatever you want to do at the time and close it down. Not 100% sure yet if we're going to have real-time preview in that dialog, but it will definitely improve the process when we revamp that. So that's going to be the very next thing that comes after the global dashboard filter. And then the other big piece that's coming shortly in Q1 is we're going to do a really big focus on now starting to integrate help and onboarding assistance inside the product, so that when you start, when somebody starts fresh, this is going to benefit mainly the new users of Yurbi, but it'll give them the opportunity to immediately start with a demo database and a lot of demo charts and things that they can explore without having to connect their data set. It's also going to give them, from an admin perspective, sort of a little step-by-step or a little wizard navigation to allow them to know where to go, to connect your data source, to build your app, to build your reports. So it's going to give them some inline help there. But for our existing users, what's going to be useful for this is the integrated help aspect here. It's going to be a widget or a menu area or some aspect of the product where we're going to start to put more, not quite sure if it's going to be question marks or or how it's going to be shown visually yet, but it's going to be a place where if you're working on a particular screen of Yurbi, you're going to be able to get some in-context help there. And Many of this help will launch them back to specific articles in our knowledge base. Some might be embedded sort of animated GIFs and videos. So it just depends. It could be a scenario where if you are in an offline mode and your users are not connected to the internet, because we have quite a few like that, you'll have a certain level of integrated help. But if you are on your users are on the internet, your server doesn't have to be on the internet, but your end users typically are connected to the internet from their work network or their home network, they'll have a more robust type of integrated help experience so that they can get help specific for where they are and their role, if they're an agent or a builder or an architect. All right, so with that, I have completed the slides and the presentation. Let's take, I know we have at least one question. If there's any other questions out there, please post that out there. We've got just the one right now. Question is, global filter, date default like, yes. So great question. As I kind of mentioned, that global filter will eventually become our criteria builder. And if you're familiar with the criteria builder, that's in the builder. It's also under the data security, where you set your constraints up for data security. So everything that you have in that criteria builder today, plus actually more, will be in that global filter. The big one that's the more is multi-select. So one of the most common things that we get requested in our prompt panels is for multi-select. You'll be able to do that in the global filter, and once we merge that back with the criteria builder, you'll be able to do that in those places as well. But that's exactly the concept. You'll be able to have a today, yesterday, this week, and those will be dynamic variables, just like they are in the individual reports. So that when you have your save view, you're looking at a dynamic variable. So thanks for that question. All right. Anybody else have any questions at this point or feedback in general? I know everybody's busy, so I'm definitely not going to hold you out here. Try to keep you here till 2 o'clock for a full hour. So we'll end this early if there's no questions and let everybody get back to work. But I'll pause for just a little bit longer and see if there's any other questions. If you have a question, just type your message right there in that chat, or under the Q&A tab, you can submit questions as well. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to just pop my screen back on as well in case somebody wants to see something in the product. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any. I think I must have done a decent job explaining what's new, because I'm not seeing any additional questions. I guess before we wrap up here, again, if you pop in your chat there, just let me know what you think. You think this is a good improvement for your business, for your use of Yurbi? Again, any kind of feedback as well, we encourage you to go to feedback.yurbi.com and submit there. We'll make that public so that others can vote on it as well. We'll give it a couple more seconds. Great, Jim. Thanks for that. Anybody who wants to do it before the new year, if you have a little bit of downtime and you want to work with version 11, just send me an email. I can definitely give you the files. I mean, you'll have exactly what I have today that I was able to show you. And as just like in Yurbi v10, once we update things like the global dashboard filter, it's just as easy. You just run that little update file. Roger, thanks for that feedback. Let's see, I've got a note here, and let me look under my, see what's this. All right, great, Brian, thanks. I can't wait for you to try it as well. All right, perfect. Hey, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to join, and appreciate you as customers and being part of the Yurbi family here. Have a great holiday. If I don't talk to you before, then Happy New Year. And I definitely will send you an email, but we know how emails go these days. They go right into the spam bucket. So while I got you, just have a great holidays. Happy New Year. Much success in 2019 for you, your team, and all your families. And just stay tuned. We got a lot of exciting stuff that's coming down the pipeline in 2019. So we're really excited to work with your organization. Glad to have you work with us. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.